and welcome to another episode of Mystical Insights. I'm William Becker, and my very special guest tonight or this afternoon, my good friend Pete Orbea. Pete is um, he's a great guy, but he's also one of the handful of mediums that I would refer people to. I think there are about two or three that I know around the world, and he's one of the ones that I would send people to. He's Mr. Port Gamble, especially when it comes to the paranormal, and has the tours, the ghost tours, the investigations, the conference every year, which this year might be interesting. We'll get into that. And he has a band, and you actually have a good background in classical music too, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, here's Pete. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm glad
Mhm.
to be here.
Yeah. So actually, it's an interesting mix just going through the introduction. How does it all work together? I know this is totally off what I had already mentioned we'd talk about, but you
I
get what you
not,
get with me.
well, I think thanks for having me on.
Uh-huh.
And to anybody watching, welcome. How does it all work together? Well, um, I think as far as the media, the realm of mediumship and energy work and all that kind of stuff, I think music can be intertwined in that.
Okay.
And so I've always had a strong passion for music, and started when I was a little kid, and the more and more experiences that I have just going through life, and playing music with different people. The guys I play music with right now, it's very easy. We're all just on the same page, mentally and energy wise when we play,
Hmm.
and it's just kind of making me think that I think music is probably a lot bigger deal than most people give it, as far as you know who we are as people and how we look at ourselves and the energy that we put out there. I think it's all works together. I think you're very much into music.
Right.
Um,
I don't
you
play
know,
like you do though anymore. I used to.
but you listen to it. You don't.
Yeah.
You hear music. You don't just listen to it, I guess is what you hear music.
Okay. Thank you.
And
Uh,
and so it seems like a lot of people, um, that are mediums, or psychics, they've got a strong passion with music, or they play music. A lot of people in the paranormal field seem to be, they play music, or it's a big part of their lives. And so to answer your question, the long version, I think music in some way kind of, for me, ties it all together.
Great. Makes sense. Now you am I right too in remembering conversations? Your bachelor's is in history? No.
No, I've
Oh,
just always loved history. If they
that's
gave out
nice.
degrees,
My
if they did.
bachelor's is history, and I was thinking, no, yours is different. So,
Now, I was a
but,
music major, but unfortunately, I never finished. So,
aha,
but history has always just been a big passion of mine. I think I became a fan of Indiana Jones at a very early age, thanks to my parents,
uh-huh.
and that really that was probably the first thing that really got me into history, and learning, wanting to learn more about it, was Indiana Jones. So
Hmm.
I have a degree in loving history, I guess.
Okay, that's even more important, I think.
Right?
So, yeah, because
Yeah.
it fits together too. I mean, music goes with styles or with periods of
Hmm.
history and periods of culture. That goes with the paranormal,
Yeah.
activity and different cultures within a site. I know it's
Hmm.
a little different here. Pete's, well, describe where you are. for those of our listeners on the East Coast or Europe or something who.
Yeah. So I live and work in a historic town here in Washington State, and it's basically across Puget Sound from Seattle and then north just a little bit. It's on the Kitsap Peninsula, and so the town is called Port Gamble, and it's one of Washington's oldest townships. It's one of the older ones in the Northwest. Doesn't have Oregon City beat by a long shot, but it's an old one. It was
Mhm.
founded for the West Coast, anyways, of the U.S. Founded in 1853, and so it was the town was built around a sawmill, and the sawmill ran until 1995. And so I work for the company that still owns and operates the town.
Sure.
It's called Olympic Property Group, and so where I'm at right now, I'm at my house, and we have a cool house. It's about 125 years old,
Mhm.
and they all have their little issues, but they have character, and that makes up for everything else. So I live and work here, and I've lived here in Port Gamble since 2007.
Mhm.
I think it's 2007, and I've been working for the town since 2011. So just at my house. We love it here. It's a great place.
Fantastic. Yeah, I love it there too, and it's different for um, people here in a sense that we've had people living on the land for 10,000 years, maybe, various versions of
Mm-hmm.
what we now call Native Americans.
Right.
Um, some much more prehistoric, some others, some that are not related to the current Native Americans,
Right.
um, some that are. But these were also mostly cultures that didn't have written languages and such. So they're actually, from a technical point of view, they're prehistoric. And it's like in Britain, we didn't have history until the Romans. It's not that there weren't sophisticated civilizations, there just weren't any histories written. So
Right.
that's prehistoric. And so it's not a slam on anybody, it's just that it's prehistoric until probably, the mid late 1700s, really, when we first started getting explorers and
Mm-hmm.
trappers and traders coming in. We had the occasional Spanish galleon blow up a little earlier than that and such, but
Yeah.
um, how does that work with? Because I know you're empathic as well as a really outstandingly talented medium, but how does that work with the spirituality of the place, the the metaphysics, the ghost? I mean the pieces. And Port
Sure.
Gamble is also a place where there are reports of things like Bigfoot, and I can
Mm-hmm.
speak from experience about elementals there. I've seen them with my own two eyes. I
Right.
mean, when I look and all of a sudden there's a dwarf type figure standing there, then he's gone. I mean, Um,
Right.
uh, so, how do you is is there a seasoned stew, or is this anything you can touch into or relate to or explain?
Well, I feel like it's definitely for me, and it's different with everybody. It's something you really got to work at to recognize or be able to focus on it. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's something that's honestly really challenging for me to tie into, or at least I guess I might be the one holding myself back from it, but it seems harder to tie into that stuff. But I do feel like no matter where you're at, that there's history to be dug up, pun intended, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Right.
There's always history that's going to lend to the whole canvas of a place, a city, a town, a place on a mountainside, whatever. It's a big canvas, and I think, you know, you have to recognize, and that has to be a piece in your mind of all that have come before you in a certain place. And I know you, when you in your travels and stuff, that's probably, I think that's from just listening to you talk about it. It's kind of how you see in the past, and especially old places, or at least places we know people were a long time ago.
Yeah.
So, like here, there's a strong Native American presence, I would say thousands of years back.
Right.
Who knows really, what was here before that?
Mm-hmm.
Or at least that's recorded, like you're going back to whether it's prehistoric or historic, after history started being recorded. So, I think for me, it's a challenge to see and recognize, or be able to focus on the really old stuff in a place. But it does help if you know the history, or some of it, or a piece of it, or some part of that canvas. It can help make sense of it, you know or at least help you recognize things, because I feel like here I do recognize there's certain areas,
Mm-hmm.
um, that I guess I just don't know what to think about it. That,
Right.
like a particular space. There's a spot in town where, um, it's just an empty area. It's a grassy field. But I couldn't tell you what really feel about it. I just know I feel something about it, and it
That's
just
the
feels
place
like
where oh, I'm sorry, go for it.
it's the place up by the cemetery. It's
Right.
across the little road from the cemetery.
Where I see the
Um,
kids dancing and the people
yes,
dancing. Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
So I guess that would be a good way to describe, at least from my perspective, is I don't really know what's there, but I know I feel something about that space.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like I can't see it, or it's like it's off in the fog on a foggy morning in the bay. I can't really see over there. So I know I
Right.
feel something about it, just don't know how to clear it up yet. And that's just part of, your own development. As you always have to learn and develop, and things
Right.
change over time. So,
Right. And it's like muscles we have to keep using and training in
right,
different ways and all that stuff too.
right.
Um, and keep separate imagination and all the rest of it. Do you
Yeah. I
find? Oh, go ahead. No.
Well, I was just going to say, I a lot of the elemental non-human, type beings, entities, whatever you want to call it. If I'm being honest, that's something that's kind of hard to believe in. You know what I
It
mean?
is hard to believe in.
It's kind of hard to believe in, and you know, and I think that doubt can be a factor in anybody's mind,
Mm-hmm.
when you're thinking about it. But I will say, when the Oregon Ghost Conference was in Oregon City, and I went to that park on the investigation there,
Mm-hmm.
and that experience we had with those, whatever those little,
Puckwudgies or Pudgewuckies. I always get the
yeah,
middle name wrong. Uh-huh.
whatever that was, I mean, that kind of made me stop and, okay, there might be something to it.
Yeah.
And I had something, my keys in my pocket were pulled over, and the palm of my hand was pushed. I felt it, and I could see my skin depress.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't I didn't know what to think after that, but I thought, maybe, well, you know what, there might be something to that. So it's, for anybody that's watching out there that may be feeling the same way, it's something that it's hard to believe in at first. Even with I'd say any facet with metaphysical beings, or
Right.
work, is it's hard to have that open mind but a critical thinking open mind. And so
Hmm.
it's, it takes practice. So, I'm not going to give up, on it, but I feel like someday I'll have a pretty good experience that I can kind of look back on to learn from. So,
Yeah, because there's a lot of it where you are, and I'm a very skeptical person. I believe in these things because I've had direct experience where I physically seen things, and there's been no other explanation. And
yeah,
I don't do hallucinogenics, and I'm, not stoned, and I don't have meds that make me imagine things. And those are all things you have to consider in this field.
right.
Because they all lead to false positives. But it dawned on me several years ago that if we really have parallel universes and all this, then with quantum mechanics and quantum string theory and such, that it makes
Yeah,
sense that people or beings can live mostly in another area and come through and go back and forth, which is why we have mystical beings from folklore that we have no proof of other than stories. And
right.
those beings are then turned into something in the story that's beyond what the being is. And then sometimes I think there are a lot of the quote gods um, from different peoples too that have come through that way that um, aren't gods. It's just that they're others. And so that's how a being would explain,
Yeah,
especially if you get a certain type of a thing coming through on a certain kind of stormy night, then that's the God you pray for to be safe on that stormy night, I guess. Yeah, I mean it's theory. We don't
yeah.
know anything. But
Well, can I ask you something?
of course. And
um,
viewers
this is your
online
show,
too.
but
Yeah.
your show, but so do you, when you talk about mythical, a mythical being or a god, in your experience in traveling to some of these ancient sites around the
Mhm.
world, when I think about history and think about times like that, I just kind of try and picture myself in that time. What is the sounds? What is what would I be hearing? What would I be wearing? Like that sort of thing. Do you think that a lot of those myths, and maybe they're just myths called myths for a reason, but do you think they had some merit back then? Is there do you think it's some myths are born because of experience, or do you think it's just an element of an experience that somebody maybe took and it just over time it grows and builds into its own story? Or like for instance, if you go back to ancient Greek times, and the different gods, what do you and the people who were mystics, who could communicate with them, like how real do you think that was? Or do you think it's just a depiction somebody hundreds of years later wrote about? You know what I
Well,
mean?
yeah, and the Greeks are a little bit cleaner of a group to talk about actually, because especially after the first Greek period that wound up with the Dark Age and the gods changed and stuff. After we got Zeus and all the rest of it, they're a little easier. And they're basically caricatures of human. They take on all of the negatives of human plus some of the positives, and they look human. They're supersized human and super built human, but they're human. And I think those are pretty much just explaining the world around them. Because, I mean, a
Right.
big religion from my study is necessary to have society because it's a unifying and building force. But those religions, especially early on, were vital to explain why things happen because they didn't have the science.
Right.
They and even after they started tracking stars and such, They didn't have the science to know how things work. They just knew that
Yep.
when that star's in that place and the sun's here, it's time to plant,
Yeah.
or it's time to move to high ground, or it's time to move the cows down to lower ground, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think with the Greeks, it's putting superhumans in charge of nature and also in charge of human emotion. It's a great way to explain everything from heroism to lust to you name it,
Vengeance. Yeah.
vengeance. And the idea of really honor and what it means to be. Sometimes the Greek gods, are pretty good lessons in what not to be,
Right.
because they're very fickle, and I mean they're just all over the place. They're not very honorable for the most
Right.
part. In other places, I think where the gods take different kinds of forms that are less human, even if they're part human, I think it's probably a combination of both. Like in Egypt, the crocodile god is a male, has a man's body and a crocodile head.
Right.
I think that's a combination of the two things. And the um, Egyptian mythology, religions, whatever you want to call them, are so interwoven and complicated. It's such an old culture that went on for so long, and then eventually was adapting other cultures and religions into it as well. It
Probably through military conquest, right?
Yes, exactly, or being conquered.
Right.
Yeah, they didn't hold up to Alexander too well or to Caesar, and the Nubians ran the ran the country for
Right.
150, 200 years, something like that. Um, so there's a lot of it that way. And one of the things I've noticed, now, disclaimer here, I don't expect anybody to believe what I'm saying about this or just because I say it. I say it
Right.
because I've had physical experiences and then I've had my own insights, my own mediumship, metaphysical, etc.,
Right.
related to all this stuff. Um, I'm not mad if you don't believe me, and I'm not trying to convert you to believe me. This is my
Right.
thought, my theory, and that's all anybody has.
Right.
But when I was traveling in Egypt and looking at temples and going around, you could tell. Okay, now this priest is really into it and believes it. This priest knows it's a sham, but it's what the people expect. So to keep peace and order. And I found a lot of this in the British Isles too, with Neolithic and Bronze Age sites.
Okay.
This priest knows it's mostly about control and money. And this priest knows that there's a combination of all of it that makes it valid in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at the crowds, because I don't try to imagine, I let it come and show me. So it's as much as possible the mediumship, the metaphysical coming to me instead of my mind trying to create something that
Right.
may or may not be accurate. Um, and people saying, yeah, this is cool. It keeps everybody happy. And others saying, we'll die for the God that is Pharaoh.
Right.
And everything in between. And it's easier for us to be cynical because we don't have, take it back. There are branches of Christianity that do have this need, but most of the Western world, especially, has the science to explain nature and how things work and why things work. We don't need religion to do that.
Right.
Whereas these other places did need more of that. And you have individuals that need less, but um, I think they were less likely to share their ideas. One, to keep order. Two, to
Mm-hmm.
not thrown in prison or beheaded, and 3, not to sow seeds that aren't going to help them in any possible way.
Right.
And I've been to places that have the ancient beings and the party beings, things like that. None of them are gods, but some of them would have been worshipped as gods by early people.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I think anybody, that far back, anybody who understood things that nobody else did, I think was probably looked at in that way. Or
right,
like a witch, or looked at as a witch or something,
right, yeah.
depending
Either
on what time era.
get hung or burned, depending on if you're a witch or a heretic. Yeah,
Yeah.
good choice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating to try and look at history through the lens of the people who lived in that time.
Mm-hmm.
Not like trying to look at it as your eyes looking at a history book and reading it and comprehending it. And that's, I think, a lot funner way to try and view things. And I do that here in Port Gamble. Try, imagine the clothes,
Mm-hmm.
the sounds of the sawmill,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of put you in that time.
Well, and when you put the sawmill piece into it, especially, that's so different because Fort Gamble is this quiet, sleepy town with very little. There's one road around through
Yeah.
inside with a very slow speed limit. You walk
Yep.
from place to place. And it gets loud sometimes if it's got a crowd of people and a noisy wedding going on, but
Yep.
it's basically a very peaceful, comfortable place. And so to think of what it would have been like with the mill running and with the ships coming in and out every day.
Yep.
You
And
had that, including steamships. And
the
when did
steam
they?
the steam whistle too that they would blow off,
Mm-hmm,
in the a couple times in the morning, at lunchtime, at dinner time, closing time,
mm-hmm. And we could hear it from the paper mills here when I was a kid, and they were a few miles away
Yeah.
and 500 feet below the cliff where the hill I live on.
Yep.
So it's it's really fascinating that way. And the houses are shops and boutiques and stuff. Some of them now,
Hmm.
not all of them, obviously.
Yep.
Now, do you have any experiences? And if I jump around a lot, excuse me. It's just.
All right, no worries.
Um, but do you have any particular experiences in town you want to talk about?
um Geez, I don't know. There's there's a lot. um
I'm not going to
hmm.
ask you to name your favorite place or favorite experience or whatever, because I know how hard that is to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I will say that um, a lot of places you go in, you just feel it right when you walk in the door.
Mm-hmm.
You feel something, uh, the butterflies start going off as soon as you walk into a building. Um, I gosh, I don't know. There's just a lot of different things. I'll tell you one scary experience
Okay.
was sitting in my office. So I run the weddings and events business here in town. Um, we host all the weddings that come in, and our office used to be in the post office building. And sitting in the office one day, and where my office was is directly under the backstage rooms of the theater that was upstairs. So up behind the stage, there was two backstage rooms,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not very big. They're not that wide. They're kind of long, but they're not really that wide.
Mm-hmm.
And sitting in my office with a coworker, answering emails, and all of a sudden, a boom. I mean, it rattled the building, and it was right above us, and it was so loud and forceful. We thought something was going to come through the ceiling,
Wow.
just boom. And we thought, I mean, who knows what it was, but I went up and looked, and in the theater there was to see if somebody was working in there. There was nobody up there. Lights are out. I mean, nothing looked like it had fallen over on the stage. There wasn't anything big enough in the back room to, you know, suggest that a big bowling ball just hit the floor or something. So I couldn't figure out what it was. That was pretty. It was startling, I'll say, because it was
Yeah.
just quiet and then boom.
Wow.
That was pretty cool. Seeing seeing an apparition in the Walker Ames house.
Hmm.
Um, it happened so darn fast, as they always do,
Yes.
as that always happens. But it was a woman, um, no expression on her face. I turned with my flashlight, and my flashlight hit her right in the face, and she had no reaction to it, and then poof, gone. And that's all
Wow.
in the matter of, you know, a second and a half, you
Right.
know. Um, that was really cool. Um, Another experience, if you want to talk more than just ghosts, with the area of Port Gamble being kind of unique, um, I think I had a Sasquatch experience in the tree line, the edge of town here. I didn't see anything, but never heard anything like it. And it was, these horrible noises and wood knocking noises happening simultaneously in this kind of rhythmical pattern. Um, and of course, I didn't think to get my phone out until it was almost too late to record the sounds
Of
because I was
course.
so because I was so creeped out, and it was really late at night. And the voices kind of stopped after a while. It slowed. It was kind of like a like this weird grunt noise, and then it kind of turned more into a towards the end, more of like a human sounding voice. And then um, not too long after, a few minutes after that, a full like naval military vehicle convoy came driving into town, and they had guys in turrets on top of these Humvees, and they were spotlighting the trees where I heard this stuff. And they were driving real slow, and then they went around, and I could hear them come back up the logging road towards where that sound was, and then I didn't hear anything else that night. And
Wow.
that really creeped me out. Because I was already creeped out, and got my wife Molly to come outside, and she thought it was a very strange sound we were hearing too. And uh, and then to have the Navy vehicles or the military vehicle, I think they were Navy just because we have a sub base close to here.
Right.
These military vehicles come driving through real slow, um, guns pointed up, in the area where I was hearing these noises come from, and spotlighting up there.
These guys were looking on for something. They weren't just out on maneuvers.
Yeah, I don't. If it was a training thing,
They wouldn't have done that late at night in the
or
residential.
well, I think they would have had to have let our company know because it was on the company's property.
Right.
Um, so it was very strange. And then a couple of days after that, I took a buddy over there because I didn't want to go by myself,
Hmm.
and a buddy had come by to say hello, and so we went over there, and every time we stepped into the tree line, there was these two loud knocks, and there was two of us. I mean, we'd step into the tree line. There's these dunk, dunk, these two big knocks, and we went up to this one little trail and went in. As soon as we stepped in, there was the two knocks, and the trail goes straight ahead, and then it does a 90, and then almost immediately another 90-degree turn. Oh yeah, there's Molly. Yes, it was like machine gun fire from a loud video. That's what the knocking sounded like that night. It was like.
That's amazing.
So we went into this trail, and we got to the first bend, and we heard this loud bump on the ground, and then it was boom, 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 and it got closer to us, and then we could hear it go by us loud. Like I've heard a bear walking in the woods before. It was louder than that, like the footfalls. And so we
Well,
finally,
there's a difference between bipedal and quadrupedal sound.
yeah,
And
it was boom, 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 boom.
yeah.
And so we got up the courage to go around the corner and up the trail, and just up from where we were, there's an old power line trail where they cut all the brush down to run the power lines. And so the grass was probably at least 4 feet tall. It was like meadow type grass. And the trail we were on was about 6 feet wide, and it had rained recently, so it was kind of a little muddy. And we got up to this little intersection, and we looked up in the trees, and there's these groupings of trees that had fallen in on each other on either side of the trail. And it looked like these little shelters at the top of them. But we were thinking, okay, well, there's a lot of people that come out here, maybe. But looking in the grass, there was, I don't know if I can get enough view here. Let's see. They felt like
Let me
these
see if I can put
huge.
this view on.
Um,
Whoops, that's the wrong way.
oh, that's okay. These big depressions in the grass, about every 5 to 6 feet.
Did you take pictures?
I did not. I'm an idiot. I've learned a lot about investigating since then. So, but there was one on one side of the trail in the grass and one on the other side of the trail, but nothing in the middle of the trail or on the side of it. So it was like something stepped over it. So my friend followed those tracks further down the power line trail. And I just kind of stayed where I was, looking around. And my buddy yelled and said, "Okay, they're gone." And so the tracks basically went right into a mountain of blackberry bushes. And then there was nothing around them. It just went straight into this patch of blackberries and was just gone. So then we came back out of the trail, and we went back to the area we first had gone in to kind of see, and we stepped in the tree line, and there was two knocks again. And I was like, what in the heck? What is, someone's messing with us or something? Has to be. And you could see from where we were, you could see part of the trail system. So we could see if anybody was over in this one, on the trails just up from where we were. And there didn't seem to be anybody. And then we heard this like loud whoop, I guess I'll say. It was like whoop, 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 whoop. And then we got the hell out of there. So that was weird. That was a weird experience. And a cool one.
That's fascinating.
I mean, honestly, I was kind of freaked out by that whole thing. I was kind of nervous about it, especially with the military vehicles. I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have seen this or heard this. I don't know.
So nobody came up in the black SUV came up to your door and started asking questions.
Not unless they did the Men in Black and wiped my memory.
Okay. Well, you
No, no,
didn't report it, so
no.
you're probably safe.
Yeah, no, I was just at my front porch and I just kind of ducked down behind the deck railing when I saw them, like, oh man, what is that about?
Yeah. Well,
So,
I mean, to me, it's pretty clear they must have had either reported something or heard something themselves because
yeah.
that's strange.
Well, there's
You know?
thousands of acres of trails and wilderness right back there. So,
Hmm.
yeah, it goes
And
on a long ways.
my understanding from my telepathic communication with them, believe it or not, is that they don't want any evidence of them because they don't trust us, and for good reason.
Yeah.
And they say no good comes from men, so I think they're interdimensional or interuniversal or something, and they're someplace else an awful lot, which is why we don't find bodies and we don't find habitat and we don't find
Right.
uh, any kind of um, waste products or anything else. And
Yeah.
occasionally a footprint that's awfully hard to tell what it is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. No, I mean, that kind of, made me take a step back and
mhm,
think about things like, okay, whoa, that was weird.
mhm.
Um, yeah. But I don't know. I've had a lot of cool experiences here in this town, and um, it's been life changing. So,
I bet.
hmm.
We don't have a ton of time left.
Okay,
We've got about 18, 19 minutes.
okay,
Let's move over to the conference.
sure. Um, well, strange year. So we're planning for the 11th annual Port Gamble Ghost Conference, and then COVID hit, and we're not really sure. I was trying to come up with some sort of mini ghost conference to kind of fit within reopening the state's reopening guidelines and the
Mhm.
phased reopening, and um, we're not. Was trying to wait until mid to late September to kind of see if I can get some insight onto hey, are we going to be moving forward with phases soon. But the conference is scheduled for November 6th through 8th. I think that's the dates. Friday through Sunday, that first weekend in November.
Right.
And I'm looking at ways to just do it all online this year and do a virtual one, because I think Kitsap County, where we are at, I think is going to be only allow for gatherings of 5 or less by that time. So that just not real conducive and not real safe to try and get a bunch of people up here.
Right.
Um, so I think I'm looking at doing it virtually. And so I hope to have some announcements coming out. I do have there is a Port Gamble Ghost Conference Facebook page. And so I'll put announcements on there.
Okay.
And as things develop as well, you can go to portgambleparanormal.com and click on the conference button, and you can check it out there. But so I'm looking at a couple of different kinds of workshops with the mini ghost conference idea. I wanted to have a science and tech based sort of workshop.
Hmm.
And so it's going to have the guys from the League of Extrasensory Gentlemen do paranormal boot camp. So that's what was planned before, and so I'm
Right.
trying to figure out how to work it now to make it virtual. So
Hmm.
I'm going to be getting with those guys to get that figured out and all the logistics. Unfortunately, they're much more tech savvy than I. Um, and then the other side of it was to have a more of a psychic based workshop, and where I invited you and your good friend Vivian Powell. to hold a psychic-based workshop. And so now I'm going to try and figure out how we can make that virtual. I'm also looking at putting together a couple of panel discussions that will probably happen via Zoom. And we'll have like a psychic-based panel, and then I think more of a a tech-based panel as well, just to try and cover anyone's area of interest. If you're more interested in the tech side or the psychic side, hopefully we'll have you covered. And I hope to be live streaming a couple of investigations.
Great.
And since I think you and Vivian will be actually here, we can keep the numbers within the guidelines. And so I hope to do some investigations with you guys, and maybe another person as well.
Vivian's done some techniques over there that I haven't heard anybody using over here.
Interesting.
Good results too. So
yeah. Well, yeah, that'll be real interesting to check out. So hoping to do that, investigate a couple of locations. I'm going to look at doing a virtual ghost walk. So hopefully anybody who hasn't been to Port Gamble that can tune in, at least get a lot of the history and some of the paranormal experiences around the town. So right now, that's what I'm planning for the conference, is just to do a virtual one. If we want to try and help out everybody who's contributing, with workshops and stuff. So it's probably not going to be free, but it will be, we understand the economics of everything right now, and a lot of people being out of work and stuff. So it'll be, we'll make sure that it's really affordable. But mostly it's to help support the people who, like you, who will be helping to put the conference on. And so, yeah, but we'll make it affordable for everybody. So keep, stay tuned. If you haven't followed the Port Gamble Ghost Conference Facebook page yet, just go on there and type in Port Gamble Ghost Conference. You'll see it. And then portgambleparanormal.com. And so I hope to have some more things in the next 2 weeks posted up that are more solidified and people can kind of plan for. But it really does look like we're not going to be able to have like an in-person conference. And I think the company that I work for is probably going to want to, err on the side of caution as well and not invite a bunch of people up. So I think that's where we're at. So we're going to be looking at doing virtual, where people will be able to tune in and really get some cool stuff, get some cool information, and learn a lot of things. I know I've learned a lot from you. I've learned a lot from the paranormal. I took the paranormal boot camp. It was awesome.
Well, it's a great group of guys too. I mean,
yeah. I think anybody can learn.
My go-to guys for technical and investigation.
Investigation tactics and critical thinking and all that good stuff. So I think it'll be a good mix for the weekend, and I think there will be something that, whatever your interest is in the paranormal, you'll be able to get something. If you're really interested in the psychic based stuff, there's going to be lots to learn. And I'm hoping for the psychic panel to have multiple people on a Zoom to run like a panel discussion and get lots of different points of view. And same with the tech the tech and science panel as well. So I'm sure we'll be able to pull something off, but it's just not going to be an in-person conference, I think. So,
and that's okay. They work out. They can work out well this way. Are you going to have merchandise available online?
Well, I do have stuff online right now for the Port Gamble Paranormal brand, for the tours and all that. So I've got, if you go to the website, portgambleparanormal.com, I'm kind of cheesy, so I put a button on there that says gear up. Just click on that button. Got various kinds of face masks, which we're all wearing them now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like throw pillows with the Walker Ames on it. There's shirts and hoodies. Um, I just got some playing cards the other day. It's got the Walker Ames on the back. So there's lots of fun little stuff. And so, yeah, anybody wants to um, gear up and support Port Gamble and Port Gamble Paranormal, check it out.
Fantastic. And how do people get a hold of you? I don't know. Are you doing readings via Skype or anything?
Yeah.
Or Messenger? He's really good. So
Whatever works. I've been doing Messenger, video calls, Skype, regular phone calls, Google Meet. There's lots of different ways I can do it. But yeah, I've actually. I don't know about you, but readings come in splurges.
right.
There'll be nothing for a while, and then everyone wants a reading all of a sudden. So I actually have a bunch coming up, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, kind of get to flex the muscles a little bit,
Right.
get them working out. So yeah, no, you can book a reading through that website as well.
Okay. Excellent.
Yep. Yeah, and if we're shamelessly promoting, I'll go ahead and shamelessly promote
Yes.
my band's album,
Oh,
Steady Rock Cosmonaut.
I need to get a copy of that CD signed.
We can
I'll
do
send you money.
that. We can do that.
Good.
You can find it at steadyrockcosmonaut.com. That's all one word, steadyrockcosmonaut.com. There you can see the name, Steady Rock Cosmonaut. But yeah, we put our first album out earlier this year, and it's been a lot of fun. And it's furthering my theory that music is a tie to everything in the universe.
Well, they're finding some of the Neolithic cairns have seemed to be toned for a pitch, and these were used sometimes. They think as a way, you get somebody in there playing some kind of an instrument or speaking in a way of
The frequencies.
yeah, and in a sense, getting the gullible to do what was needed. It's part of the ritual in a sense, but it's also part of the fakery magic for people. I mean, were you talking about some of these other things? The Delphi, the oracle, was over a fissure that, I mean, the priestess was stoned out of her mind on all these gases coming up, and the priest that did the interpretation had spies all over everywhere reporting back, so he'd give information on that.
Right.
Some of these ancient temples with the doors that open and nobody's there and close, they use sand as a hydraulic type movement.
Okay.
And so people have been exaggerating the spiritual experience for thousands of years. And I think some of these others too. I hear 110 hertz or megahertz or whatever is. Some of these caves have been, or not caves, but sites have been. I know Barry Fitzgerald's talked about that, and I've watched documentaries where they've talked about that kind of thing too. I mean, time team. We're not talking about some out there.
Yeah. I need to look that up.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see if there's any kind of a site that would echo that around where you are.
Yeah.
Because population.
Yeah, I've just always felt, music is it's deep in our souls.
Mm-hmm.
And it can help, I think, open things for people, and
mm-hmm.
it does things to your brain that aren't normally happening when you're not listening to music or not hearing music.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's all part of it.
a lot of ancient cultures have pretty much felt the same way, it seems.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
mm. Oh,
Yeah.
this is great. We've got, oh, about 5 minutes left. Do you have anything else of
Well,
importance?
you mentioned Alexander earlier,
Uh-huh.
and I often think about um, the Library of Alexandria,
Mm-hmm.
and I
That's a
wonder
great
if I
concern, yeah.
wonder what survived. I always you hear that what all these things that could have been destroyed. I wonder what survived, and we just don't know it.
It's a good question. And what survived and was lost later? I mean,
hmm
yeah, the the Muslim empires, and I'm not sure which one, did a lot to save manuscripts they found and copy them and um, help save
Yeah,
literacy and mathematics. The monasteries, the Christian monasteries in Ireland and England, but also then they spread it into the mainland of Europe, did a lot of that too, when the Vatican wasn't saying something as, the monasteries saved a lot of things they weren't supposed to.
yeah,
Um, so I know there's some of that still around. How much, I don't know. And that
yeah,
by then it would have been spread out of several buildings.
yeah.
And it's a good question.
I mean, how different or farther advanced do you think humanity would be if that place had not burned down and all of that stuff saved and passed on? I mean, that's ancient knowledge type stuff, I think. All that stuff that would have been in there is ancient world stuff. And
Yeah,
how would the world be different? You know what I mean? Religion would probably be completely different.
I think that's possible.
Yeah.
Um, I also, especially since most of the burning was from Christians who went on a rampage. And there was a brilliant woman in Alexandria at the time that was also very rich and very compassionate and gave away a lot and taught a lot. And they humiliated her and brutally killed her. Um, oh, it was horrible what they did. But I think a lot of the practical knowledge, like mathematics and stuff, were already being used to be, something? I need to get my dates checked and right because if if the Islamic populations were already working on the math and doing all these things,
Right.
then it's not a set us behind technically because people were already doing things.
Right.
If it happened before that period, then it could have slowed us down a lot. But culturally, historically, philosophically, there would have been so much that from all over the world because every ship that entered port had to turn over their books to be copied. And
hmm
sometimes I got the copy back, sometimes I got the real book back. Every once in a while, I didn't get anything back. Um, Ptolemies weren't any better than anybody else, but they
Yeah.
wanted that collection of knowledge.
Yeah.
And I like that question. It's interesting to speculate.
Well, that's for anyone out there who's watching this that can look into the past, and I just wonder what survived that we don't really know about. You
Mhm.
know, and it'd be interesting to know what was destroyed. Really,
Yeah.
all that.
And from other places too. there were all kinds of libraries around the world. Persepolis, um, Greece. I mean, there are so many places where the
Yep.
libraries were destroyed, and we'll have certain things from these places because of clay tablets,
Yep.
but the volumes were often on something more flammable.
Yeah. Some
Sometimes,
more.
sometimes they're on a stone or a clay tablet, but
Yeah.
often they're papyrus.
Yeah.
So start saving your money, and my next trip to Egypt, let's go to Alexandria and see if we can figure this out.
Yeah. Right. That would be awesome.
So the the reading jar can be an Alexandria jar.
A trip jar.
Yeah, there are lots of places over there my tour didn't get to that I want to get to
Wow.
too. So you know,
Yeah, I'd love to go visit old ancient sites. I think that would be so cool. Just, I mean, not yes for the history, but the feeling. I want to see what those areas feel like.
all of it together, it's I want to use the word magic only because I can't find a better one.
Yeah,
But magic doesn't do it justice.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. That'd be awesome.
Yep. So start start saving. Put the girls to work. They can start saving for dad's trip. No, college funds. Who needs them?
Yeah, yeah. We'll see when that happens. Yep.
Oh, well, Pete, we have hit just over an hour. I want to thank you
Nice.
so much. This has been great fun,
Thanks
and
for having me on.
you're welcome. And we will do it again. Any last minute, anything people need to hear from you?
Well, just appreciate being on here with you. It's good to see you. I wish everybody to be well out there, and keep your chin up, and make it through these crazy times we're going through, and listen to music, right?
Absolutely. Definitely
Um,
how to make it through the crazy times.
yeah, and if you're interested in anything going on in Port Gamble with ghost tours, which I will be starting those in October, but I'll only be able to take 5 people at a time for now. Just go to portgambleparanormal.com. And like I said, look up the Ghost Conference on Facebook at Port Gamble Ghost Conference. Just look that up, and hopefully, I'll have some more updates in the next couple weeks as to what people can expect for that first weekend in November with our 11th annual virtual Ghost Conference. I guess it'll be this year.
Great.
And so, looking forward to having you be a part of that, and Vivian as well. And then hopefully the guys from the League of Extrasensory Gentlemen, have them involved too, and we'll make it work.
Great. And share this around. Later today, it'll be on my YouTube channel,
Okay,
and that'll be on pretty much automatically on the Spooky or Simply Spooky Facebook page. Pretty
great.
much when we're done. So
Will
for those
do.
for those of you who have listened live, go ahead and get the links out and all that too. We love the attention.
Well, it's
There, I
fun to
said it.
see.
I'm honest.
Yeah. Hey, well, you got to be.
That's right.
No, thanks for having me on. Really had a lot of fun.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye bye.